to this episode of Evo Inspire. Today, I'm lucky enough to be sitting down and having a chat with Max. Tell us about yourself, Max.
Yeah, so I'm an engineering lead at Aesop. I've been here for like four and a half years now. But I run a lot of the digital engineering through Aesop.com and a little bit of the systems that surround that. My role is split between managing people, managing delivery, managing solution design, things like that. A lot of things to handle, a lot of balls in the air at times, but it's a fun role. Yeah.
What's one piece of career advice you wish someone had given you when you were first starting out?
Yeah, I mean, probably something like you can't make everyone happy. Although I think people told me that many times throughout my career, but it took a little while for it to land. I've been fortunate. I've never really had like a nemesis or anything like that in my career, but I've spent a lot of energy trying to make sure that people are happy.
Yeah.
Things like, I think when I stepped back from trying to make people happy, I actually ended up making people happier.
Right.
There was a good kind of point where I was able to give some not harsh, but fairly direct feedback to someone. And they responded really, really well. And I ended up promoting them, a year later. So it's one of those realizations that it actually is better to just be honest, to be straight up, to kind of not sugarcoat things sometimes. And yeah, I think, unfortunately, you have to learn that sometimes the hard way. I'm pretty sure I got told that many, many times, and it wasn't until I actually bit the bullet and did it that it finally clicked.
And can you share a pivotal moment in your career journey that made a significant impact?
Yeah, my career's been a bit of twists and turns. So I don't know. I feel like there was a moment I think in my first job, I had inadvertently worked with heaps of senior people. I didn't realize it at the time, but that I was brand new and the next most junior person, and junior's a light word, they had 10, 15 years experience. So it was kind of working in an environment, I get stuck on something, I go ask for help, and I get this big long lesson about this is why it's doing that, this is the way it's working. And I think I kind of felt like I was just stupid. I didn't understand it all. So it was working through that. It wasn't until I left that job and went somewhere else that it kind of clicked, and I was yeah, that person had, lectured at RMIT on Python, or this person had worked at CERN in Switzerland or something. It's even today with all the experience I have, I still don't have as much as I did or as much as they did when I was working with them. So it's I think the imposter syndrome fell away not long after that. And I kind of clicked that it's not really what you know, it's kind of how quick you can learn it, how quick you can acquire information. They told me at school I wouldn't have a calculator everywhere I go, but it's one of those things if I can bring up a calculator in a second, does it really matter that I don't remember my 7 times table or something like that? So yeah, take that, grade 4 teacher.
So how do you approach challenges and setbacks in your professional life, and what's your go-to strategy for overcoming them?
Yeah, I'm an engineer at heart, so it's pull the problem apart. That's kind of what I love doing. You can approach it from when you teach people how to split stories up, and it's you do that exercise of planning your day, and it's I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's your first things are going to be the same no matter what. Be that I got to get out of bed, have a shower, have breakfast, all of these things. But it's I find problems, especially technical problems, the closer you get to the actual problem, the easier they are. Often when you're at the very first day of a project, you might just have all of these things in front of you and you don't know how it's going to click together. But, by the time you're in week 4, a lot of questions are answered. I remember there was a team I was working with last year, and they had this 8-10 week project, and they were freaking out because they're in the middle of the project, there's an unknown. And then it was we'll just start the project. And then it turned out that as soon as they started actually writing code, the unknown unraveled itself straight away, and it was just to do with the structure of a variable. So it's one of those things that's move forward, be in motion. I think from a physical sense as well, sometimes a walk around the block is all that's needed to kind of clear some blockers.
And lastly, what lessons have you learned about sort of leadership development, particularly in sort of guiding and mentoring other leaders within your organization, whether it be you leading leaders or sort of having someone lead you and guide you?
Yeah, I think it's For technical leadership, it's interesting. I notice a lot of people come into technical leadership and it's that classic thing of you are good at the job, so now you're going to manage the people that are doing the job. And like for a lot of engineers, it's like they led by example up until they were a senior dev. They were writing the best code. They were kind of showing people how to do things. They were mentoring through that. And then suddenly, they end up as like a very senior dev or a tech lead. And it's like, all your time's gone. You're not writing code anymore. So it's hard to lead by example. And I think it's like important to realize and help people realize like there's different styles. Like leading by example is just one thing. Like I tended to lead with like transparency for a long time. And like it's interesting that that's changed for me over time. As I've kind of been doing it more, I've had to kind of monitor who I'm transparent with, who I'm kind of more, just not censoring information, but just making sure that I'm not kind of saying things that will like lead them down a path or panic them or anything like that. So it changes over time. It changes depending on who you're working with. Like some people can handle straight direct feedback. Some people might not be able to. So, you need to be conscious of who you're leading. And I don't know, I steal this quote all the time, but one thing I like is like, it's essentially the difference between a manager and a leader. And it's like, a manager is, in front of the jungle, they're cutting down all the bushes and helping the team get through. A leader climbs the tree and says, you're in the wrong jungle. So it's like, you've got to kind of realize that it's like leading people is slightly different from managing people, requires different skill sets. Some people might say like, it's just charisma, but I think it's like, you have to trust a leader, and like charisma is important in that, but not entirely. It's like dependability, consistency. Those things are kind of important in a leader. Like you don't want to go to someone for advice and, they'll flip out one day and be great another day. It's kind of like you need to create that consistency with people. I've been fortunate to kind of work with good leaders like that. But, you do find people and it's like, I think charisma gets you to a point, and then you need to learn to lead in a totally different thing. And then also it's important to have a leadership team. Like, managing people, you end up in sticky situations. And one thing I find really interesting is it's like you're caught up in your team and you like have all these emotions. You talk to these people, you work with these people. It's really easy to have a sounding board and like for someone else to kind of help you through things. And it's really easy to give advice when you're not so close to the problem. So it's important to have like, a management team or a leadership team or a bunch of people that you can use as sounding boards.